Hey, I'm Ted Santos. I'm your host of Straight Talk, and we are that talk show that is made for men by men. Ladies, you don't want to miss it. There's no better place in the world for you to learn how men really think. And, well, today, as you see the topic, I'd like to have a conversation with you about power. Like power, in Spanish, poderoso. What makes a man powerful? Is it Is it a fist? Is it a gun? A bomb? Is it a pen? Is it your voice? Like power. And it's interesting. So I'm doing this because earlier today, this morning, there's a guy. His name is Ramil Amir, and Ramil was doing a show on how Jeff Bezos made $13 billion in one day. And a lot of people were upset. In fact, he said someone tweeted that we should all go to Jeff Bezos' house and rob him. I mean, for one, he's not going to have $13 billion, not even a billion, probably not even $1 million in his home, unless you're going to steal the watches and cars. And so you're not going to get his money. You'd be better off no longer using Amazon, which is he's the founder of, and starting your own. I mean, that would be one way to steal his money, is to just take all of his customers, right, to compete. And that was part of what Ramil was talking about. Be competitive. Don't get mad at someone. The fact that Jeff Bezos is successful with Amazon, he started that from nothing, and he's making billions of dollars. Well, if you really don't like it, be a competitor. Do your own thing. Bezos is showing that it's actually possible to make $13 billion if you can set up the structures to do it. And he's not robbing people. He's providing a service. He's made life easier. So there's some power in that. And so when I came on to his show, he allowed me to come in and join the sort of panel and discussion. I said one of the things that people were not talking about was power. And I'm really talking about power. The kind of power a man can bring to the table that is distinct from a woman. So, there were all men on this panel. I don't know, maybe it was like 8 or 10 of us. No one really wanted to have the conversation about power. So I probably became a little bit aggressive on the call, and I was really being a little forceful and also demonstrating some power by illustrating the point of the need for power and how men can actually take power. You seize it. No one's going to give you power wrapped in wrapping paper under the Christmas tree. It's just not going to happen. So one of the things was mindset, and a lot of people were saying, "Oh, you need money to have power. Well, everyone can't be a billionaire." At no point was I saying everyone needed to be a billionaire. I was talking about the kind of power, and it ultimately becomes money that gives you the political power that you need to write policies. So when I think of power, you can think of a football team, right? So if you say, well, everyone can't be a billionaire, well, not everyone's going to be the quarterback on the football team, yet you still have 11 men on the field who as an offense take you to the Super Bowl and they win. That's a powerful team. So when you have a guy who's 6'7", 330 pounds, you don't try to make him a quarterback. You make him an offensive lineman who is powerful in his position. And as a quarterback, if I'm the quarterback, I need a guy who's 6'7", 330 and powerful and fearless, who's going to protect me from the defense coming in who want to stop me from passing the ball, throwing it, or even handing it off. As an offensive lineman, you need to block. I need wide receivers who don't have to be 6'7", 330. They need to be fast as hell. They could be 6'2", 200, 220. Yet they're all powerful. None of them have to be a quarterback. You only need one quarterback. So it's the same thing when you're building power in a company or even in a movement. There has to be something to accomplish. And when you have a football team, the quarterback is supporting. He's the guy who has the task of getting that ball across the goal line. So either he's going to run it himself, he's going to throw it to someone else, or he's going to hand it off to someone else. But he's in charge of the ball and getting it across the goal line. And everyone's okay with that. Your team will fall apart if everyone believes they should be the quarterback and have the task of getting the ball across the line. Everyone plays a role. So power is really about mindset. Even if you're not the quarterback, even if you're not the CEO of the company, you can be the damn secretary, the receptionist. I once heard a receptionist say, I gave it away, the punchline. There was a woman who said, I'm the chief of first impressions. And the person said, wow, chief of first impressions, what do you do? I'm the receptionist. That woman had power in her position. She was in charge of giving the first impression by phone or when someone walked into the office. And she was 100% responsible for the first impression that she gave off in the position of a receptionist. She didn't need to be the CEO. So in my talk or in my conversation where I became very aggressive about men, and I was speaking specifically about men being powerful. Why? Because just imagine if the United States gave all the power to women. All the CEOs of companies were women. All the executives. All of it. Investors only invested in women companies. Banks only gave loans to female companies. What would women do? All the jobs women don't want. They're dangerous. They're deadly. They're dirty. All those jobs would go to men. And I don't know, what is that? 10, 20% of the jobs that women just wouldn't want? The garbage collector. They would turn those jobs over to men. And women would do everything else. What would our society look like? Women don't take as many risks. Think about any company that has been founded and led by women that created breakthroughs like the light bulb, like the airplane, like the iPhone, hell, the computer. Women don't take those kinds of risks. They don't invest in money in things for which you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So women do a great job at improving things. And that's not in everything. You see improvements in science and technology. Hell, Wi-Fi was an improvement on cellular service. But the structures, the cell phone, hell, even the telephone, Alexander Graham Bell, even if he got the patent from someone else, at first people said, oh, that's ridiculous. Women thought a telephone was a ridiculous invention because if they wanted to speak to someone, they would walk across the street or the other side of town and speak to their neighbor. Calling someone seemed ridiculous. So women are less likely to make those kinds of risky investments for which you can't see the successful light at the end of the tunnel. So if women ran everything, we probably wouldn't see any more breakthroughs. what men have already started is they would improve or attempt to be successful at it. But something that's completely new, like social media, flying to space, right? All of these things would just, and there are things that we don't even know because no one has thought of it yet, that a man will risk, maybe even risk his life. So if women ran everything, our risk tolerance would drop and then probably affect men. So men probably eventually wouldn't take risks also. And just in our military would be mostly men, right? You put all the men in the front line, even though front line doesn't really exist in the military. But just as a side note, historically, whenever there was a queen overseeing any kingdom, once she came into power, queens tend to declare more, tend to have more fights and wars than kings do. And part of that is because the queen feels like she has to prove she's not afraid. So where a king may negotiate and have a really tough, combative conversation and negotiate, the queen would just send men out to the battlefield. And what's interesting, I remember on 2 occasions, attractive women I knew told me they were curious and possibly being bisexual or lesbians. So they asked me to accompany them to an all-woman nightclub. And for the record, when a song came on that all the women liked, to hear them scream, man, it was like hearing, 75 or 100 women all having an orgasm at the same time, man. It was a pleasant sound to a man's ears. Well, the thing that I noticed was women actually were fighting in these clubs, nightclubs. No men in there. There were women. And they were fighting. I don't know what the hell they were fighting over. And one of them, I remember this Ethiopian woman asked me to go to this mostly women club. Lesbian women are promiscuous, just like men. This woman and I, Ethiopian woman, we were sitting at a booth. She's across from me. And some gay woman comes up behind me and says, "Hey, are you and that woman a package deal?" She said, "Because I'm interested in having sex with both of you." She said she had never been with a man, but if she was going to be with a man, she would want to be with a guy like me. And so I asked the woman who was with me, are you down? And well, she kind of chickened out. So she was just curious. But the interesting thing is the lesbian said to me, "Hey, you have to tell me quick if you want to do this or not, because I have a girlfriend who's on the other side of the club, and if she sees me talking to you too long, she's going to get jealous." So I'm saying women are just as promiscuous as men. We just have this fantasy image of women of being sugar and spice and everything nice. So if we had women running the show and giving them all the power, we'd probably have more wars, and women would be promiscuous like you can't imagine. Our society would go out of control because promiscuous women generally become emotionally unstable. So what does this all have to do with power? So, men, you have a lot more power than you realize. The problem is your mindsets, and I heard it on this call with Ramil's show, we don't train men to be powerful. I mean, we think in terms of, I can kick your ass, I'll fight you, I'll beat you up, or I have more money, I have a bigger car. Well, when we really talk about power in a way that you can influence politics, communities, nations, that's a different kind of power. That's not, I'm going to beat you up. But that also means powerful men work together for a greater good, right? So you look at Amazon, you could say, well, he made $13 billion in a day. But look at how many packages are delivered. Like, we have a pandemic and people didn't have to go to the store because Amazon would pick up your food and deliver it to your house. Convenience, safety. I mean, that's a lot of power to make that much convenience for millions of people. There's a greater good in that. And he should be rewarded because he took a risk. No one else thought of it, and if they did, they failed at it. So there's a mindset that a lot of men are not being trained in. And when you talk about power, and it's one of the things where I was a little harsh, you hear a lot of justifications and excuses. So one of the things that's hurt our society, and it's, you see men losing power in our society, is we've allowed women, feminists, to decide, we've allowed them to decide what it means to be a man. They even tell us that we're supposed to get in touch with our feminine side. I don't know how they came up with that. So when we talk about power and training mindset, it's really comes down to unlearning a lot of these things that we've been taught. You have to get in touch with your feminine side, right? You want to unlearn it. You want to destroy this mindset so that you have the freedom to be a human being who just happens to be a male species. And biologically, the male is very different from a female. We have biochemicals that make us more aggressive. That's why we take more risks. That's why we do the more dangerous jobs. That's why we invent things. We create industries that women wouldn't go out on the edge and risk it all, because there's something that we have as men that they just don't have. So as men, we need to be empowered to be that. Turning over the nation and the power of the nation to only women, I think it'd be more detrimental to all of us. Men would become more disposable. So think about all the myths that we were taught, that men only want sex, right? Women are smarter. Power is not for everyone. You have to have money to have power. That was one of the things they were saying on the show. So think about this, right? So everyone thinks, well, you have to have money and you have to have notoriety. There's a joke that says Einstein was no Einstein when he was in school. He wasn't very fond of following authority. And he was like an average student. Steve Jobs, what happened to him? He was fired. He was demoted as CEO and pushed down. And then he was the very man who had to come back and save Apple. Jack Ma, CEO and founder of Alibaba, no one wanted to hire him. I think, like, not even for Kentucky Fried Chicken. Like, he failed. He was failing at everything. And look at him now. Multi-billionaire. And he's the founder of Alibaba. So if you think of anyone who is influential and powerful now, you didn't know about them when they were a child or a teenager. Except for them, like a Steve Jobs, to become who they are known to be, I am asserting that those guys always had the power in them. Just because you didn't know them and didn't see the power doesn't mean it wasn't there. And so I'm saying that as men, we all have that power. You go back to the football team example. Everyone doesn't have to be the quarterback. You can be a powerful linebacker. You can be a powerful defensive end, running back. You can have power in whatever your area of expertise is, but power is a mindset. It's not how many people you can beat up or how many bullets you can shoot. It's the ability to accomplish things in the shortest time. Like, there's some power and velocity to your accomplishments, to your ability to form alliances with other men for the intent of accomplishing something. That's also power. I mean, people who don't have really a lot of power may spend more time trying to prove they do, which means they're never going to get along with someone else because they're always trying to one up someone. So training your mind has to be a big part of that. And sometimes a lot of you guys have power, but you haven't found a way to channel that power. So maybe it's going out in too many different directions, or it's being used in a way that ends up being self-destructive. Maybe you end up even being in prison. And there are plenty of guys in prison who are powerful, whether they are a drug lord or a bank robber or whatever else they can do. So there are some things that actually can derail and get in the way of your own power. So there are things, and many of you may refute this, there are things that you don't know about yourself. And you can deny it all you want, but I'll give you a perfect example. I knew a woman, she was an attorney, very good trial lawyer. And she said, boy, why do I always have to fight to always be right? You know, even with her boyfriend. And I said, oh, at some point you probably gave the wrong answer. She said, oh my God, yes. I was in a dentist's office. I was 5 years. I said, it probably happened when you were around 5. She said, I was 5 years old. I went into the dentist's office. I was sitting in the waiting room with a bunch of other children and their parents. The dentist came out and he was holding something. He said, hi, children, who knows what this is? And she was like, oh, I know what it is. And she gave the answer and the dentist said, no, wrong. And she said at that moment, she sat there and said, she said to herself, she looked so stupid. She was so embarrassed. She was the dumbest kid in there, and she would never let that happen again. So what did she do? She went off to law school to be a trial lawyer where she gets to be right in the courtroom, and she fights her ass off like an alley cat to win for her clients. And that's great as an attorney. But when she's in a love relationship or even a friendship or even with her employees, because she had her own law firm, that mindset was not powerful. So as it worked in some area, so she was trained to channel it as an attorney, but as a CEO of a company, it was inappropriate. It was destructive. In her relationships, it was destructive. So what she didn't know about herself, she didn't even know she didn't know that the 5-year-old in her, even though she was like 45, the 5-year-old in her was running her life. It was dictating that she had to be right and was terrified of being wrong. And, you know, there's more to it. But that's just an example of how there are events that happen in our lives and they shape who we are forever until we intervene, like disrupt that mindset. And there are many mindsets that short circuit our own power. So when I talk about training and development, this is part of what I'm talking about, is unlearning. So for her, she had to unlearn that and unlearn anything else that was attached to that event at being 5. The other thing I'm talking about is, you know, there are things that we are taught. Men only want sex. Women are smarter. You have to have money to be powerful. You know, it's like saying Einstein had to get straight A's to be a genius, or he had to be well known to be Einstein. Hell, he was always Einstein. Part of the reason why he questioned authority is because he was probably smarter than them, even though he was getting C's. But he didn't let that stop him from pulling his genius out of himself. So what we do as men is we allow these myths, like men only want one thing, women are smarter than you. We allow that to have us put brakes on us. Well, women are smarter than us anyway. And we feel like we have all these barriers around us based on all these myths of what it means to be a man. And, you know, if you're a real man, you're going to pay a woman's rent, and if you're a real man, you're going to marry her, and you're a real, like all these things strip you of your power because someone else is defining what it means to be a man. So all these things have to be unlearned if you're going to train your mind for power. You have to deal with the things that suck power out of it. Because if you don't, those things seem like they are real. They're almost like a boogeyman, and you justify their existence. Well, I'm a real man, so, I'm supposed to just want sex. I can't be out chasing, I got to get some ass. I have to do all this stuff. Well, women are smarter than me anyway, so I have to sort of bow to them. The power of pussy, to actually believe that pussy has power over you. All that has to be unlearned. And people who are really powerful, one of the things they are good at is managing conflict. So a lot of people think managing conflict is about managing the other person, dealing with the other person. Really, managing conflict is how you manage yourself, right? So if you've already presupposed you don't have power and you're trying to negotiate with someone and you believe they have power because they have money or because of their name, then you just stripped yourself of power. See, think about people who had no power and were actually able to take that power, even though they seem to be in a lower position. A lot of you people like that book. I have it somewhere around here. 48 Laws of Power. I probably have it over there. I have it somewhere else. Those 48 laws of power. You don't have to be in a powerful position to be able to position yourself as powerful, right? So you don't have to be in a position of power to position yourself as powerful. You have to have a mindset. And part of it is being able to manage conflict. So when you engage in a conflicting situation, instead of being triggered by the conflict, because the other person or other people can use conflict to undermine you and get you all triggered and upset, and then they can just manipulate you and move you where they want. Sometimes women do that with guys. But when you have power, you can be like in the middle of a tornado, in the eye of it, and not be twisted and turned around. And in the middle of a tornado, you can say, I need to handle that, and that, and that. In a tornado, that is power. And that's training. Most people don't have that. If you have the fortune of having parents that are like that, and you get to see that, that becomes normal. But not everyone has that. And it's the same thing if you're dealing with a woman and you believe she has the power of pussy. You believe you actually have to go along to get along. And then they all become justifications. And what's crazy is a lot of guys, we end up invalidating ourselves by invalidating men, by saying men only want one thing, and women have all the power, women are smarter than us. I mean, all this stuff, someone projected that onto you, or they imposed it onto you, and now you just project that onto the rest of the world, to your son, to other men, to younger guys. And you're really just teaching them how to be powerless. When as men, we really do. We were biologically engineered for power. You see it in sports. You see it in business and the risks. You see it in innovation. You see it in industries, the jobs we do. These are power. A lot of men don't want to own their own power. And so I'll just leave a closing thought. So for you guys who really do want to get married, you want to have children, and you want to raise a legacy, and you want a wife to do this with. I know the gentleman Ramil said have a surrogate. That is definitely one way. However, if you really do want to raise your children in a two-parent household, you have the right to assert your power. And I'm not talking about physical power with your woman. Do not marry without a prenuptial agreement. And it's not just about money and assets, when that definitely is part of it. There are also children in this. So while things are good, before you marry, and not the day before, you want a prenuptial agreement signed and not a one-page document. You want it to be nice and long, that covers things like she's knowingly, voluntarily signing this, right? Because marriage is a prenuptial agreement. And a lot of men, you become powerless, at least you think you are. So in your relationship with your woman, you actually have the right as a man to make demands for what you want. And not be at the mercy of pussy. You have the right to demand the kind of woman, the kind of ways you want her to engage you and to engage the rest of the world as she represents you. You have a right to demand that she has a network that benefits you. You have a right to demand that she enriches your life. And if she cannot, then she has not earned the right to be in a legal binding contract called marriage. Marriage is a prenuptial agreement. It gives her certain securities in the event it doesn't work out, or in the event she says irreconcilable differences, I'm out and I'm taking half. So you need a prenuptial agreement to protect yourself, not only for assets, but how the two of you engage after the divorce, and especially with your children. But you have the right to demand that kind of power. Now, if you doubt me, look at the things that the impact of MGTOW and CISPM and all the others, even teenage young men are creating their form of MGTOW. Women are sitting up and listening. They are starting to notice that their behavior is unacceptable. All that shows is that men have always had the power. You just had to go through this extreme. So if you do want to be with a woman, there's a mindset of power that you have you have a right, a gender right to power. If you look at the world, you go to any country in the world, everywhere I've been, the infrastructures, the industries have all been created by men. The entire civilization sits on a foundation of convenience and safety that men have created, not women. And then you're charged with protecting this civilization. So if you have to build it and protect it, why should you turn over the power to women who will just exhaust it and then be upset with you when they destroy it and ask, why did you let them do that? So gentlemen, whether it's you as an individual, if it's a community, Hispanic, the black, the Asian, the white, there's power that you have a right to. And you undermine yourself with a mindset that buys into, I don't have enough money, I'm too young, I'm too old, men just want pussy. Women really have all the power. We have to, women's secret. All these beliefs need to be trained out of people. And I'm not talking about reading books. I'm talking about real training where you unlearn belief systems, entire belief systems, thought patterns, that you reverse engineer, like the lawyer who had to reverse engineer why she had to always be right and destroy that pattern so that you can then develop or even invent your own thought process, as opposed to just embracing the one that was given to you. We were all given through school and the media, our parents, they impose their belief systems. You have a right to unlearn that and develop one that supports where you want to be in life. And that's a very different kind of commitment. And with that kind of mental power, it makes it easier to build teams, and those teams get across the goal line. But as long as you believe you can't have power, and without power you can't accomplish certain things, you will just stay in the same spot forever. And so will the next generation and the next. You'll take a socialist check and we'll all be slaves. So the power is on you. I'd like to know your thoughts about this conversation. What are the things that you do to develop power? And I'm not talking about power in your neighborhood or community. I'm talking about broad sweeping, being able to come together with other men and accomplish things through teams, like a football team, a powerful 11-man team that can get the ball across the goal line, or their defense who can shut down the offense of the other team. That's power, and not everyone plays the same role. So I'd like to hear your thoughts about power, your comments. Like this, share this. Every single man, young or old, really needs to hear this message. Share it, comment, like it. If you know single mothers who have sons, they need to hear this so that they can give this to their sons to hear. Join me on Sunday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, for my Straight Talk talk show. And join me for these provocative conversations. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I look forward to coming back to you with another provocative conversation. Take care.